think it's going to fall under the basic category of I was right. Trump is as bad as I always said he was, and he might actually ultimately be worse. But he's really, really, really bad already. He's not even president, and he's really, really, really bad. So we'll start with the peace deal, the ceasefire deal in Gaza, which, we've known is going to happen. It's been talked about since really the summer. Israel seemed to have wheeled itself out of it. Hamas didn't want to do it for a while. And it looks like it's going to happen. That is, there will be a deal to release, in phase 1, 34 hostages. Israel will release 1,300 terrorists, of which 200 are murderers. That is kind of, and Israel will basically retreat from much of the Gaza Strip. Now, we're still waiting to hear exactly what they're going to retreat from, but all the places that Netanyahu said, we're not going to retreat. There's no way. This is strategic. We have to stay here. He is now retreating from. They will create some kind of security buffer, and they're going to allow the Gazans to move from South Gaza to the northern Gaza, something Israel resisted vehemently allowing. And then when it considered it and proposed solution for it, they said, okay, we'll allow it to happen, but they all need to be screened by Israeli forces to make sure they're not moving weapons to the north and they're not moving fighters to the north. Well, now it turns out that the screening of the Gazans moving north is going to be done by the, pro-Israeli, pro-Western, anti-Hamas, just phenomenal allies of the West. The Qataris and the Egyptians are going to do the screening. Now, remember, the Qataris have been giving Hamas money for years now, with which they build tunnels and weapons and everything else. The Qataris have also hosted Hamas's leadership in Qatar for a long, long time. The Qataris are also the host country and the #1 supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood, which is basically the Islamist mothership. The Qataris are, they play a game. They are also, by the way, just so you know, the largest funders, I think, of American universities, of anybody. Billions and billions of dollars into American universities. The Qataris, these are the people who are going to monitor that Hamas, the ally, does not move weapons to the north. And then the Egyptians, these are the Egyptians that, had a border with Gaza, allowed tunnels to be built across that border, allowed massive quantities of weapons to be smuggled into Gaza. Of course they knew about it. There's no question they knew about it. It was right under their noses. They're going to do the monitoring for Israel to make sure that weapons are not smuggled north. And then the Philadelphia corridor, which is the corridor that basically covers the border between Gaza and Egypt, which Israel claimed was strategic and and that it had to control. Otherwise, Hamas would build tunnels again, or otherwise Hamas would just move weapons from Egypt into southern Gaza. Israel insisted on keeping that. They would keep troops there. They would stay there. at least according to the latest reading of the deal, Israel will withdraw from that. Now, they hold on to the right to go in and retake these territories later on. It's just basically what Israel has done is surrender to Hamas. Now, we'll see why in a minute, but they've surrendered to Hamas. They basically said, we're not going to defeat you. For whatever reason, we can't. There's a sense in which our public won't allow it, our political leadership won't allow it, the world won't allow it. So we're gonna give up on the goal of victory completely. There's nothing here about victory. It's all about and that phase one, and then phase two is going to involve the return supposedly of the rest of the hostages, and it will also involve Israel withdrawing from whatever it still is in Gaza, again, with the exception of some kind of security buffer. And it will involve, I guess, some kind of resolution in either stage 2 or stage 3, long-term resolution for Gaza. And given Hamas still has about 20,000 fighters in Gaza, I mean, who's gonna supersede them? Who's gonna take their place? Who's gonna do this? So this is basically Israel giving up on every one of its goals when it's set out after October 7th to defeat Hamas. I mean, how many times? And God, when will you people start believing me? How many times do I have to be right to get any kind of credibility? But I told you Netanyahu would cave. I told you when he says victory doesn't mean it. I told you, Israel will not defeat Hamas. And here it is. They're completely caving. Now, we'll see the final details of the deal, and we'll see how it evolves over the next few months. But clearly, this is surrender. This is Israel bringing out the white flag. 5 soldiers died yesterday in the northern Gaza Strip. Why? For what? Over 400 soldiers have died in this war. For what? To weaken Hamas a little bit? To take out their leadership? They just replace them? What exactly was the purpose of this war? They've destroyed a lot of the buildings, the homes, the infrastructure. For what? What's the goal? They haven't diminished the Gazan people's commitment to destroy Israel. They haven't reduced the power of Hamas over the Palestinian people. They haven't reduced the popularity of Hamas. And indeed Hamas is not quite as big and strong as it was, but it's almost as big as it was when the war started because they keep recruiting more people. 40% of Gaza basically, I think, was never occupied by Israel. And the 34 hostages that are going to be released, the last I read is they hope that they're alive. But there's a good chance, they believe, that some of them are dead. Israel is basically defeated, given up, for the bodies of the dead, and maybe few alive, at the expense of what? At the expense of thousands who will die in the future? At the expense of hundreds who might be kidnapped in the future to get more deals like this? 1,300. Israel insisted that the 200 murderers not be released into the West Bank or Gaza. Rumors have it they're going to be released to Turkey. All right? I wonder if that's the last we'll hear of them. Remember, Sinwar was one of the people who was released. Sinwar, the head of Hamas, or the one who Israel just killed a few months ago, was one of the people released, and in the last time, Israel released over 1,000. I mean, this is disgraceful. It's shameful. It's contemptible. It's defeatist. And I get the importance of getting the hostages back. But at what price? At what price? Hamas, I'm sure, is celebrating this as a massive victory. And that's all we need. That's all the West needs. It's all Israel needs, is Hamas to feel victorious. And that's exactly what's happening. Well, one question is, and again, we'll have more details about this in the next few days in terms of, in the news story I read, Israel believes most of the 33 are alive, but that some are dead. So it's going to be interesting. So the 200 are released into Turkey, but the 1,000 are released into the West Bank. So there's another 1,000 terrorists that you can add on to the list of already terrorists that are there. Again, all of this speculation, we will see. Maybe they'll send the 200 murderers to Qatar, which is where they probably belong, and where they'll be celebrated and where they'll be, put up in the Four Seasons or something. The first phase is 42 days. Again, Israel forces will withdraw from population centers. Palestinians will be allowed to return to their homes in northern Gaza, not that there are many homes left there. This is the other part of it. There's going to be a surge in humanitarian aid. Now, notice that there was never famine in Gaza. Massive amounts of humanitarian aid have flowed into Gaza, huge amounts, but it's never enough for the altruists. Never enough. The sacrifice is never enough. Notice also that Israel could have won this war fairly easily by shutting off the water, by not allowing any trucks with food to go in there, by shutting off the electricity, and God forbid, this is the worst of all, by shutting off internet and cell phone service, which are all provided by Israel. Talk about sacrificing for your enemy. Talk about explicit and equivocal altruism. Imagine if they'd done that and said, okay, you want water? Easy. Release hostages. You want electricity? Release hostages. You want internet service? You want cell phone coverage? Release hostages. This is not 2 steps forward, 1 step back. This is 2 steps forward, 10 steps back. This is the Netanyahu government policy vis-a-vis Hamas, a continuation of his policy that he started 20 years ago. Appease, compromise, cut deals, and hope somehow they change or go away. So the Philadelphia corridor, they will stay there in phase 1, but they will reduce the number of forces they have there. But they will pull out completely from what's called the Netzarim corridor, which splits the Gaza from north to south, which they said they would always stay in, that was permanent. They would never leave. They will leave that in phase 1. In phase 2, they will also, or in future phases, they will also leave the Philadelphia corridor. And they will get the rest of the hostages, supposedly. Again, mostly, I assume, most of the remaining hostages are probably dead. We will, as I said, I will update you on the final aspects of this deal when it happens. Now, why did Israel suddenly capitulate on all the things that they had declared red lines that they would never cross? What made it urgent that this deal be done now, today, tomorrow, this week? Well, here are the headlines from Israeli newspapers yesterday and today. Trump's Mideast convoy forced Netanyahu to accept a Gaza plan he repeatedly rejected. This is from Haaretz, a leftist newspaper who hates Netanyahu. Times of Israel. Hostage talks advanced after, quote, tense meet between Netanyahu and Trump envoy. The Guardian in England. Trump's Middle East envoy visits Netanyahu in push for Gaza ceasefire. The Telegraph. How Trump's salty, in quotation marks, envoy may have forced Israel's hand on hostage deal. Trump envoy presses for Gaza ceasefire deal before January 20th Netanyahu meeting. Now, I told you weeks ago that when Trump threatened that there had to be a deal, otherwise all hell would break loose, I didn't think he was talking about the Gazans. I didn't think he was talking about Hamas. He was talking about Netanyahu. Relationship between Netanyahu and Trump have never been particularly good. By the way, last headline I saw, and you will see if once the deal is cut, this changes. But this is the headline again from the Times of Israel. Netanyahu unlikely to attend Trump inauguration. Hasn't had official invite, aides say. It could be that this deal was his way to get the invitation. I don't know if you saw, but Trump 2 days ago shared a video of, God, what's his name? The academic, the pro-Russian academic who used to be at Harvard. God, I forget his name. Anyway, the guy berated Netanyahu. Netanyahu always wants war and always is pushing America into wars, right? This was an interview he did with Tucker Carlson. Jeffrey Sachs, thank you, New York. Jeffrey Sachs. Trump shared this on his Truth Social. No comment, just shared this clip where Jeffrey Sachs goes off on Netanyahu. So Trump's relationship with Netanyahu is not a good relationship. He thinks Netanyahu is too arrogant. He's talked about this, once he left the White House, that Netanyahu is too arrogant, that Netanyahu wants America to do Israel's bidding. And Trump wanted a deal. He didn't care about the details of the deal. He wanted a deal. And if Hamas stuck to its guns, and it did, literally, then the only people Trump has leverage on, you can come to my inauguration if you do this. If you sell your people short, you sell them downriver. The only levers he had were on Netanyahu. The only levers he had were on Israel, and he used them to the fullest extent. Supposedly, Trump's envoy to the Middle East is a Jewish real estate developer who flew to Israel on Saturday and said he demands a meeting with Netanyahu immediately. And he was told Netanyahu doesn't meet on Saturday. He'll meet you Saturday evening because he doesn't work during the day on Saturday. And the envoy says, I don't give a shit. You get him here. I am meeting him now. And Netanyahu went and met him. And that was a meeting in which his arm was twisted and Trump's basic demands were conveyed, and Netanyahu completely capitulated. So this is Trump making deals. One of the things that Trump recently has been quoted as complaining about Netanyahu is that Netanyahu constantly is trying to drag America into a war with Iran, which also suggests to you how Trump is going to approach Iran. He's not going to approach Iran from a position of military strength. He's not going to take advantage of Iran's weakness right now to destroy their nuclear facility or to give Israel a green light to do so. He is going to approach it from the perspective of negotiations. They are weak. We can cut a better deal with them. We can cut a good deal with them. So this is Trump through and through. Now, it's not just Trump. It's also Netanyahu. Netanyahu is a sellout, always has been a sellout. He's a weakling, always has been a weakling. He's a coward, always has been a coward. He's an indecisive coward and always has been. I've been critical of Netanyahu for over 25 years, and it saddens me. But every time I think, okay, maybe I've been too harsh on him, just like with Trump. Maybe I'm too harsh on him. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'm a little, maybe I'm being too hard. They prove me right over and over and over again. So depressing, depressing as hell. And yeah, I do expect Trump to send Iran huge amount of cash, because I think that's what a deal will involve. A deal will involve the loosening of sanctions, Iran supposedly giving up on their nuclear ambitions, but not giving up on much more, and getting a loosening of sanctions, which is basically the equivalent of gazillions of dollars in cash. You guys can continue to try to save Trump. You can continue to try to rationalize him, justify him, pretend that he's not as god-awful as he actually is. But he is god-awful. He wanted a deal before January 20th so he could have a win. He's not going to have a win in Ukraine. He said Ukraine would be over before he was inaugurated into office. He's not going to get that win. Not going to get that win. So he is going to get at least a win in Gaza, even though it's not a win, it's a loss. He is going to sell it as a win. Right? He released hostages. By the way, the first hostages Hamas will release are the 5 Americans, supposedly. We will see. Again, we will see. But there you have it. There is a deal. Israel will pay dearly for this deal. It will pay dearly for this deal for many, many years. This is a deal I predicted would happen all along. What surprised me was Netanyahu's toughness with regard to Hezbollah. But then again, there was a ceasefire, which was weak. What surprised me was Israel willing to enter Syria and take control of a buffer zone there. We will see how that turns out. Yeah, it's depressing. What can I say? It's just depressing.